And we have interpretation available. So if you speak Cantonese, Mandarin, Portuguese, Russian, or Spanish, and you prefer to listen to the meeting in the language you use, just give me a moment. But soon you'll have the option to click the interpretation button to join the relevant channel. So I just need to put that up. Sorry, y'all. Too much going on. All right, starting the interpretation channel. So now everyone should have the option to join the channel of the language of their choice. And if there are any issues, flag them, please. All right, gonna share my screen again. Great. So your microphones are turned off to start. Once we get to the Q&A portion, if you have questions, you can unmute to speak. If you're joining by phone, you can press *6 to unmute. You can also raise your hand or leave a message in the chat box, and we will work to answer your questions and view your comments that way. So tonight we're going to start with a presentation, then we'll do some Q&A, and then we're going to have the opportunity to go into breakout rooms to actually review the sites. There'll be 4 breakout rooms, and we'll kind of explain that when we get to it. And I'm going to pass it off to Kim, who will introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. So we're excited to have you all here today for our open house. So just a quick overview of our agenda, a little more detail than what Louisa just shared. So first of all, this brief presentation that we have is just aimed at providing some basic information about the need for expansion and how we go about planning for it. And then we're going to share some potential sites that we've identified for the neighborhoods that we're focused on right now. So that's Allston, Brighton, Fenway, Mission Hill, and the Longwood Medical Area. And really our goal is to get input from our residents and constituents about which sites are going to be best for the respective neighborhoods. So just quickly, a little bit of background about our bike share system, Bluebikes. It is public transportation by bike. We have about 530 and growing every day stations in Boston. I'm sorry, in the system, system-wide. 290 or so of those are in the city of Boston. So we have a strong majority of stations. And it's about 4,700 bikes throughout the system. We introduced e-bikes into the system a little bit over a year ago. There's about 750 e-bikes total. Bluebikes is publicly owned. Like I said, we think about it as public transportation by bike. So each municipality owns its own equipment and the stations and then the bikes that go with it. It's currently operating in 13 different municipalities. We have a contract with Lyft, the Bikes and Scooters division of Lyft, to operate the system on our behalf. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts is our title sponsor, so they provide a lot of support to help make the system possible. And as I've said a couple times now, the municipalities were all collectively the owners of the system. So one thing that's really been important for us from the beginning of bike share in Boston is equity. There's lots of different things that go into making sure that we're reducing or eliminating barriers to bike share. One of them is making sure we've got good access to the system throughout the city. So that's a lot of what we're going to talk about in a little bit. But also price is for sure an important consideration. So we've had a long time income eligible program throughout the system. About a year and a half ago in Boston, we launched a more heavily discounted pass for Boston residents. For anyone who meets income guidelines, anyone who's on any kind of public assistance or has an income that would qualify them for that, get access to Bluebikes for just $5 a year. Other residents of the city of Boston who don't meet income guidelines, we have a discounted pass for $60 a year if you have not had a membership in the last couple of years. So there are millions of trips taken by bike share. In 2024, there were about 4.7 million system-wide, and in Boston, that was a little over 2.5 million trips. And we expect that this year there will be even more trips, basically year over year. Bluebikes has really grown significantly. Over a quarter of the trips last year over a quarter of the Boston trips started in Allston, Brighton, Fenway, or Kenmore, or Mission Hill, the neighborhoods we're talking about tonight. So this is a really, busy, well-utilized section of the system. So we have a long-term transportation plan in Boston. I imagine a lot of you are familiar with it. It's called Go Boston 2030. When we first launched that plan in 2017, the goal for bike share was to make sure that every household was within a 10-minute walk of our bike share system. You can see where we were in 2017. We had a long way to go. Here we are in 2025. We've gotten much further. So we've made a lot of progress towards this sort of big, so our highest level goal for us in the city. We have gotten bike share in every neighborhood of the city, and we're around close to 90%, probably actually a little bit over that now. Households in the city are within a 10-minute walk. So with that big picture goal, we're doing great. But any of you who ride bike share regularly, especially in some of these neighborhoods that we're talking about tonight, you probably, if you ride Bluebikes, you probably have experienced some pain points. We know that the system is not really keeping up with the demand and the need for more bikes and more docks available. So in 2022, the mayor announced a 100 station expansion. And since then, Louisa and I have been working to plan that expansion. And that's really why we're here today. So when we think about planning for new stations, we kind of think about two big categories of stations. Infill stations, so all of the neighborhoods, perhaps with the exception of Brighton, kind of the edges of the Brighton neighborhood that we're talking about tonight, are really thinking about infill. So filling in gaps in between the existing network. How are we really meeting the demand and solving those pain points? And then expansion stations, that's about expanding the outer limits of the network itself, really getting us closer or eventually to that 100% of households reached by bike share. So just a little bit of background about the kinds of things that we considered in planning out these 100 stations, figuring out how to distribute them across the whole city of Boston. We looked at things like population density and job density. So this is showing on the left population density and the right job density in Allston, Brighton. You can see some very high areas, especially population density. And similarly, here's Mission Hill and the Fenway. Again, some of the areas of kind of highest density of people living, and then you can see right there in the LMA area, the Longwood Medical area, real concentration of jobs. So in these kinds of areas where we have a lot of people living, a lot of people working, also in busy commercial areas, we know that for the system to really be effective, our goal is to have bike share within a 3 to 5 minute walk. It's going to really help us make sure that the system is reliable and really meeting the transportation needs. So here in Allston, Brighton, the areas that are in light red are a 3 minute walk, within a 3 to 5 minute walk from a station. The dark red is over 5 minutes away. So with this expansion, we're looking to kind of reduce those areas of red as much as possible, and particularly the dark red. So you can see the stations that we're proposing in Allston and Brighton. I want to say right off the bat, we're not intending to install all of the sites that we have proposed. We have a lot more potential sites than we can do, and that's so that we can really be responsive to what we hear in these meetings and the other parts of our public engagement. But if we were to do all of these stations, you can see in the map on the right, that's what that sort of dark red and light red areas would look like. A lot more people that are within that 3 to 5 minute distance. And here's kind of another way of looking at a similar thing. This is in Fenway and Mission Hill. So the sort of little blobs that you can see around each station is that 3 to 5 minute walk zone, where you start having overlap of those blobs. The blue area gets darker. There's sort of more stations that are accessible within a 3 to 5 minute walk from a given area. And so again, like in Fenway in particular is really right at the top of neighborhoods in terms of the volume of trips that we see. So really adding to the station density is going to make a big difference in terms of making sure that the system is more reliable for people to be able to get where they need to go. Another metric that we've used is what we call lost trips. So it's an estimate of how many trips didn't occur, how many trips we lost because there weren't bikes available at a station like this one. This is a station right by City Hall, or because there weren't docks available to park a bike. And because bike share is very rich in the data, we have literally every trip that's ever been taken. We also have all of the instances. Anytime a station goes empty like this, we know when that happened. We know how long it happened for. And so we can kind of combine those two data sets, the trip volume with the instances of a station being empty or full, and come up with a pretty good estimate of how many trips we're missing or sort of losing because we don't really have the capacity that we could have. So just looking quickly at a snapshot of these neighborhoods, these focus neighborhoods, the larger circles represent, the larger circle it is, the more trip volume there is. The colors more on the orange and yellow, red, orange, and yellow are the highest numbers of lost trips. So you can see again, as I said, especially in kind of Fenway, moving into Back Bay, though we're not talking about Back Bay tonight, really see a lot of these lost trips happening. Right, so I'm going to pass it back to Louisa, who's going to talk a little bit about our public engagement.
Yes, thank you, Kim. So we are doing this 100 station expansion in phases. And that means that we're doing the siting work in phases, the community engagement in phases, and the installation. And so right now, we're in phase 3. We started this work in the fall of 2023 during the month-long red line shutdown. We installed 8 new stations in Mattapan and Dorchester to support riders during the shutdown. And then we continued the work in 2024. We focused on downtown, the South End, Charlestown, East Boston, and South Boston. And now we are in phase 3, which is Allston, Brighton, Fenway, Kenmore, and Mission Hill. So the community engagement started last month and will go through the end of this month. And then in April 2025, we are aiming to start installation next month. So we are looking to install 6 to 9 new stations in Allston, 6 to 12 in Brighton, 6 to 12 in Fenway, Kenmore, and up to 4 in Mission Hill. So this is our third open house for this phase. We had one at the Jackson Man in Allston, another at the Fenway Community Center, and this is our third open house that's virtual, and the content has been the same at all open houses. We're sharing the same site, so folks had the option to join one or the other. We also have online surveys, and here's the URL. You should feel free to share comments on the survey. I mean, we're kind of collecting comments tonight, but also the survey is available. We've also flyered in all of these neighborhoods, and we've hung these plastic signs up at each of the proposed sites that, so you can see in the photo. Here's one in Mission Hill, I think. So what is next for us? We are going to consider all the comments that we've gotten in the open houses from the survey, folks email us, things like that. And then we'll use those comments to help us narrow down our list of sites. And then we'll finalize that list and work on getting permits and permissions particularly for any sites that are on third-party property. So we wanted to share a little bit of a context about what makes a good site for a Bluebike station. So good sites are visible, they're not super tucked away or hard to find. They're clear of utilities, so it's important that the base plate part of the station is not covering any manholes or utility covers. The bikes can cover those things because they're easily movable in an emergency or anything like that. Station has to be accessible to the Bluebikes service van. They come and might need to repair the station, or they rebalance the bikes regularly. All stations must leave room for pedestrians to get by, and we prefer them to have at least 4 hours of direct sunlight a day in order to charge the computers on the station. And we want stations to be where you want to go. So Bluebike stations can be on the sidewalk or on a plaza. We do have requirements for how much space is left clear for pedestrians that well exceeds ADA requirements. So we require kind of 6 feet at the minimum standard. Every once in a while, we'll go down a little bit less than that, but certainly never below 5 feet. And depending on if a station is on a sidewalk that is against parking or any type of curb use that would have vehicles pulling to the curb, we make sure that there's enough space so that people can get out of the car doors. Stations can also be in the parking lane, and they can be oriented either pulling towards the sidewalk or pulling towards the street, depending on what's going on in the ground or kind of how the street feels. A station that has 15 docks takes up about the same space as 2 vehicles. Stations can certainly be on City of Boston property, but they can also be on private property. And so these are just a couple of examples showing that it can be really hard to tell what's private and what's public. But when they are on private property, we have to make sure we have permission to do that, and we sign a license agreement and all of that. Stations are also hosted by other public agencies or other departments within the city, not just the transportation department. So MBTA or DCR hosts some of our stations, and similarly, we also have to execute an agreement with them. So that is it for our presentation. We're gonna move into the question and answer period. So feel free to raise your hand or type your question in the chat, and we'll kind of alternate back and forth between those. Please be respectful with your comments, and we are gonna end the Q&A in about 15 minutes so that we have enough time to cycle through all 4 of the neighborhoods in the breakout rooms. And if there aren't any questions, we can jump right into breakout. Oh, Jax, yes. Go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to say, I obviously wrote something in the chat, but the majority of the people that I see in the Back Bay using Bluebikes have never ridden a bike before or falling off in the middle of the road. They're not using signals. They're not using proper bike etiquette. They're riding on the sidewalks. They're hitting pedestrians. So, is this not just a Back Bay issue? Are you seeing this all throughout Boston? And how are you making it so your customers are not causing more traffic problems and issues for pedestrians than causing good and helpful commuting access to the people of Boston?
So I can respond to that. First of all, we know that the most effective way of of ensuring that people will ride bikes in ways that have the fewest conflicts with other users is good, protected, safe places to ride a bike. So our protected bike infrastructure is the um, best tool that we have to make sure that as many people as possible are riding in the street. We do regular bike counts and I collect a lot of data, and I can assure you pretty confidently that in fact, a vast majority of people are not riding on the sidewalk. I understand that it does happen sometimes, but the more we have good, safe places for people to ride on the street, that's where people are going to prefer. I can tell you, as I'm someone who has ridden a bike in every neighborhood of the city. It is absolutely much more preferable to ride in the street whenever I can. I mean, I ride in the street all the time, but it's just like it's no fun to be on the sidewalk. You can't. It's just not. Um, it's not designed for bikes, and people get that. Um,
Great. Well, we've got a pretty small group today, but we can still do the breakout rooms. Dan, if you want to trigger those. Great. Thanks all. I'm gonna go ahead and join the Brighton room.
Is there somebody that's leading this room, or is this just a public forum for people just to talk?
Hi, Jax. So this meeting, the objective of this meeting is to hear feedback on site locations for Blue Bike infill. This is not really a space for public comment. You're welcome to voice your
听
opinion.
这个声音。好，然后
Oh,
呢，就是我们希望听
sorry.
到大家的意见，然后呢，你也可以呢，就是把你的声音可以提出来。
Sorry, one
Sorry.
moment.
Are we still doing Q&A? We're not done with Q&A. Jax, are you here to talk about some particular sites, Allston, Brighton, Fenway,
I'm
Kenmore,
on
or
the
Mission
marketing
Hill?
committee of the Back Bay, and I was told about this meeting. And like I said, we're having accidents, and this is happening repetitively. So, as a realtor and as a Boston native, I want to wonder what is happening and who is addressing these issues because they don't seem to be of any concern. So, I'm just trying to share this information with the public because it is my business. And like I said, whoever just commented about what I said is not true because I live on Common Mass Ave and multiple times a day I see your customers on the sidewalks, not helmets, hitting pedestrians, not using, the bike lanes. So it is a concern.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that concern. We'll definitely take that back. Do you want to review any of the sites that we are sharing tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy. I used to live in Allston, Brighton. I'm very familiar with the area.
Great. So we have 4 different options, and I see that I should get back to my room because someone is there wanting to review sites for Brighton. So we're gonna rotate all the rooms, so you'll have the opportunity to review all the sites if you want, but you can choose. So if you go to the bottom of your screen and should be the little button towards the right-hand side that says breakout rooms, then that will open a pop-up, and then there's some blue buttons on the right side that say join. So you could join Allston, Brighton, Fenway, or Mission Hill. All right, I'm heading to Brighton. Thanks all. And I'm gonna turn off interpretation so that you can speak to each other. And I'm also going to end the recording. End and stop recording.